welcome back to Football Picks here on TalkingSports.tv. We're at one of the most wonderful bars you could possibly imagine, Charlie Fitz Whiskies in Vaughan, Ontario. Come by, see us, have a drink, have some wings, are the best wings around. You'll have a good time. Uncle Ben from UncleBenFootball.com, handsome Howard Kamen, one of the owners of Charlie Fitz Whiskies and, just one of the most famous handicappers you know. And the two of these guys are talking about this weekend's picks so you can pad your wallets. I'm Marty York, by the way. Now, the big game this weekend, the biggest game this weekend, and certainly one of the biggest games of the year, involves Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos, because Peyton Manning returns to play in Indianapolis for the first time since all his accomplishments with the Colts. And he faces, I like when they say a quarterback faces another quarterback. They actually don't face each other at all because they're never on the field at the same time. But it is Peyton Manning versus Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck has done a very good job in a short period of time in the NFL. Although, Ben, I did not think Andrew Luck looked good at all in San Diego Monday night, just as you and Howard figured what happened. Both of you love the Chargers. And Indianapolis, to me, looked awful. They couldn't put a touchdown up. And was Andrew Luck maybe looking ahead a little bit to this big visit from Peyton Manning and Denver this weekend?
Well, you know what? That's a good point, Marty, because I think maybe both Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck were looking ahead to this week, because the Denver Broncos certainly had no interest in that game last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. That was quite apparent by the results on the scoreboard. But this is certainly the marquee matchup of the year. Doesn't mean it's the marquee game of the year, but it's the marquee matchup of the year. Basically, you've got Peyton Manning, who left the organization, as we all know, and basically his replacement, Andrew Luck, came in. So it was kind of like a trade for Peyton Manning for Andrew Luck type of deal.
Yes.
Kind of. And I like the fact that the Indianapolis Colts did lay a stinker on Monday night. Maybe they were looking ahead. And I think that there's good value here. Now, the Denver Broncos have failed to cover the spread the last 2 weeks, even though they've won the ball games.
Right.
They narrowly beat Dallas in that spectacular ball game.
Right.
And last week we just mentioned that they had no interest in the Jacksonville Jaguar 27.5 point spread. Jacksonville covered it there. So that's 2 weeks in a row they haven't covered the spread. The public's been obviously all over the Denver Broncos, after the first 4 weeks when they were scoring 40 and 50 points like a college football team they were. I think the line's up to 6.5. Probably will go to 7 by game time. If you like the Indianapolis Colts, I would certainly wait on placing a wager on that game.
You like
and
Indianapolis?
actually, I like the Indianapolis Colts to
Really?
rebound in these games. Peyton Manning does not play well in these big stage, high-profile, media-type situations. He's won a lot of ball games, don't get me wrong. He's a fantastic quarterback, Hall of Famer. There's no question about it. But these are the games that Peyton Manning has failed to win in his career. It is. And I happen to like the Indianapolis Colts this week, playing at home. All the pressure is going to be on Peyton. Peyton's going to be pulled in every direction this week from the media, not like Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck will be in the film studio studying, believe me. But Peyton Manning will be out doing press conferences and all this type of things that he's going to be doing. And he's going to have a lot of distractions in Indianapolis this week.
Very interesting.
And I like the Colts to rebound big this week. I don't know about you, Howard. Let's get your take on that game.
Well, first of all, the game Monday night was definitely a sandwich game for the Indianapolis Colts. The week prior to that, they played the Seattle Seahawks, and the following week, the Denver Broncos. Two teams which are expected to probably go to the Super Bowl this year. No one would be surprised if Denver played Seattle in the Super Bowl this year. So Indy, for whatever reason, threw a stinker out Monday night. We picked it. Me and Ben both saw that San Diego was definitely the play that night. I'm going back to Indy this week. I really believe that not only do I think Indianapolis Colts will cover the spread, I think they have a very good chance to win the game. If you remember Indianapolis Colts last year, the game that turned their season around was when they beat the Green Bay Packers at home. For whatever reason, Indy plays well at home against quality teams. They beat Seattle earlier in the year, and I expect them to come out there guns a-blazing. I agree with Ben. Peyton Manning's going to be bothered at every instance by the media this week. And in fact, I wonder how the fans are going to react to Peyton Manning. Are they going to be cheering him? Are they going to be booing him?
They'll be cheering him, man.
I would agree.
Standing ovation.
Well, I don't know so much. Now he's the competitor, and
It doesn't matter. We're talking about one of the best quarterbacks,
Possibly.
if not the best,
Possibly.
in NFL history. He did a lot of good for Indy too.
Yeah, but you
No, no.
don't know exactly how the fans are
Put
going to react to
Indianapolis
that.
Colts on the map. Let's not be mistaken.
Exactly.
But
Look what happened when he left.
when he gets to the line of scrimmage in this dome, it's going to be very noisy in
Very
there. And he
loud.
runs his offense at the line of scrimmage, okay?
Yeah.
And then they're going to make it as
Yeah, they know
difficult as
that,
they
yeah.
can. They
Yes.
know exactly what Peyton Manning does. I'm talking about the fans now.
Yeah.
And they're going to be whooping it up the minute he gets to the line of scrimmage and tries to call his offense, because they don't huddle very often, the Denver Broncos.
Right.
He's going to have a tough time. And they're going to have a little miscommunication, a tough time communicating. You might see some, what am I trying to say? Snaps, premature snaps, motion penalties,
Quick
things
snap.
of this nation, things of this nature. That it's just going to be that much harder for the Denver Broncos this week, I think, going home. And I just think the Indianapolis Colts, never mind the points, I think the Colts are going to win this ballgame.
Wow. Okay, there you
I
go,
do.
folks. Both Handsome Howard and Uncle Ben like the Colts at home. You can get 6.5, maybe 7 if you wait till game time. But Uncle Ben thinks that the Colts win the game outright, so that the Denver Broncos could suffer their first defeat of this season. And I mean, we know one thing. We know there's going to be a lot of passing. We know that Denver can pass on Indy's defense. We know Andrew Luck can pass on Denver's defense. Ben, I don't think Denver's defense has been very effective.
Well, interesting. Well, Denver's getting Von Miller back this week, which is really going to help them. He's one of the finest defensive players in the league, I'd say, along with Patrick Willis. But interesting, what happened on Monday night was San Diego ran the ball down their throat all game long. They did not pass the ball. Okay, and that's going to be interesting to see how the Denver Broncos react to that, because that game was one of the shortest Monday night games in history, by the way. Okay, that game ended real early because all they did was run the ball down their throat, and that showed the vulnerability of the Colts defense, which is not really the strength of the Denver offense, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
I'm also going to be interested to see how Trent Richardson does at running back for the Colts.
I watched him play those last few games, and it doesn't look like he's really found his stride yet with Indy, but I believe this week is the week that Trent Richardson starts to look like the Trent Richardson that Cleveland Browns drafted 3rd overall in their draft. And I think Trent Richardson will have a great game this week against the Denver Broncos.
It does take a while to come into mid-season and pick up the entire playbook, learn your blocking schemes.
Learn the whole play.
There's a lot you have to do. People think that you just walk in and you can play running back.
Never.
There's a lot more to it.
No.
And I think now...
It's a very intricate position.
And plus, the offensive line have to know Richardson also, which way he likes to cut, which way he likes to turn. They have to know
I
his
agree
style
with you,
as well.
Howard. I think look for a good game from Trent Richardson. This guy's got too much talent to be dormant like this.
He's going to explode this week.
Right.
He will explode.
Now, as a game that I'm interested in, I want to pick your brains about, guys. Buffalo and Miami. Miami's an 8-point favorite, the latest I saw, over Buffalo. I'm interested in Buffalo because last week they played the Bengals, the visiting Bengals, pretty tough. I mean, they've covered the spread there at home. This week they go to the road against their arch rivals, and they play the Dolphins in Miami. I haven't really liked what I've seen of Miami lately after predicting early in the season that they were going to be a formidable team. They look kind of weak lately. Now, they've had a week off, so maybe they'll be well rested. But Thad Lewis at quarterback for Buffalo, a guy who was like their 4th choice, the Bills, but he kept getting hurt, or the other guys kept getting hurt, Thad Lewis looks like he's going to be ready to play against Miami. Who the hell is Thad Lewis?
Well, Thad Lewis came out of Duke University. I think he's making $500 and some odd thousand this year now for the Bills. He came over from Cleveland, I believe. He was drafted by Cleveland, I believe. Cleveland drafts a lot of quarterbacks, by the way.
My point is this guy good enough?
Well, no. I think last week he was riding on pure emotion. They brought this kid off the street against a Bengal team that's played on the road and hasn't played well on the road, by the way. The Bengals lost their first 2 games on the road against Chicago, I believe, and Cleveland. And then they come into Buffalo with a 3rd or 4th string quarterback and win by the skin of their teeth. It was a very exciting ball game, I got to say.
It was.
This kid put his best foot forward. Now, going out on the road, his first time against a rested Miami Dolphin team that has a pretty good defense, I might add. I don't like their chances this week, the Buffalo Bills.
So you would lay the 8 then?
Well, I haven't seen 8. I've only seen 7, to be honest with you.
Well, that's a big difference.
Well, it is,
Yeah.
and I haven't seen 8.
So 7 you definitely would lay.
7, I think I like the Miami Dolphins at home, coming off a bye week against the Buffalo Bills, traveling on the road with a quarterback that, he's a third-string quarterback at best.
At best, yeah. Okay.
I say take the Miami Dolphins at home off a bye week, -7.
Handsome?
I would lay the 8. I would lay the 10. I would lay 12 points in this game. Miami Dolphins will destroy the Buffalo Bills in this game. I agree with what Ben said. Normally, when a quarterback like Thad Lewis plays his first game at home, there's a certain adrenaline flow. The fans are pumped. Now he's going back to Miami, facing reality. Miami was off a week after a Monday night loss to New Orleans, where they were embarrassed. So I'm sure they've been practicing very, very hard. Coming back home, historically the Miami Dolphins play very well at home against the Buffalo Bills. I don't know what the record against the spread is, but I can see Miami winning this game by at least 2 touchdowns.
Howard and Ben, one of the reasons I picked the Dolphins to do well at the beginning of the season was I thought Ryan Tannehill was going to come into his own, pardon the cliche, this season and become a respectable NFL quarterback. I also thought that with the acquisition of Mike Wallace, that offense was going to be a lot more productive. But the truth of the matter is that Tannehill and Wallace have not been able to get on the same page. They look like they can't even work together. And unless, to me, these two guys learn how to work together, I think the Dolphins, okay, I see what you're saying about the Bills. I'll take the Dolphins in this game as well and lay the points. But I'm concerned, if I were a Dolphin fan, that this team isn't going anywhere this year unless Tannehill and Wallace can learn to play together. Am I right or wrong?
Well, they're having some offensive line issues. They lost Jake Long, who happens to be one of the finest offensive linemen in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you can't protect your quarterback, and Tannehill's been pretty mobile too, but if you can't protect your quarterback, it's hard to get the ball to Mike Wallace, because Mike Wallace is he's not a 10-yard route kind of guy.
But he's been doing some 10-yard routes, and they've been right in his hand. And he's been either here or there.
They didn't get Mike Wallace to catch
breakaway wide receiver.
They didn't get Mike Wallace to catch 10-yard passes. You know what I'm saying?
True.
And if you don't have the time to get down the field 25, 30 yards, then you can't get the ball to Mike Wallace. So that's what I'd have to say about that, Marty.
All right, you're watching football.
By the way, Howard, one more thing: the Bills are 1-4. Their last 5 trips against the spread going down to South Beach.
Yeah, so
Take my
they'll be
hand.
1-5
Take
after
my
this
hand.
week.
Take my hand. You're watching Football Picks here on TalkingSports.tv. And there's another intriguing game this week, and I know it's not in your top picks categories, guys, but it's the Chicago Bears, who have done pretty well under former CFL coach Mark Trestman. By the way, I spoke with Mark Trestman this week, and he's just loving the NFL now. This is what it's all about for him.
He's winning.
And he's winning, and he's got a team. It doesn't have Brian Urlacher, he says, but this team is doing, pretty darn well. They're putting points up on the board. And what he said is he's treating Jay Cutler exactly the way he treated Anthony Calvillo with the Montreal Alouettes. In other words, he's put him on a pedestal. He's made Jay Cutler the guy, the man. And the rest of the team worships Jay Cutler now. Whereas Jay Cutler wasn't worshipped in the past under Lovie Smith. Jay Cutler, in fact, was questioned by his teammates about his toughness and about his commitment.
Totally, 100%.
And now it's a completely different story. Jay Cutler's the man in Chicago. Chicago goes into Washington this Sunday. Washington has just come off an embarrassing loss against the Dallas Cowboys on a Sunday night last week. It's a pick'em game. Who wants to tell me why the Vegas bookmakers, as alert as they are, have made this only a pick'em game?
I'd be happy to step in on that one, Marty.
Go ahead.
Well, this is the number one fish spread of the year, in my opinion. You've got a 4-2 team, the Chicago Bears, visiting Washington, who is 1-4.
Right.
And the spread is pick, or Washington by 1 even in some places, which is a complete and utter fish. We talked about fish spreads about 2 or 3 weeks ago. That's when something just doesn't look right. Something's just like too good to be true.
Yeah,
it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay? Now this tells me the spread says everything in this game.
Yeah.
The bookmakers obviously are not impressed with the Chicago Bears.
I don't get it.
They've beaten them. Well, look who they've beaten. They beat the Cincinnati Bengals week 1. Granted, it's opening day. Cincinnati's the best ball club they've beaten, but it's opening day in Chicago. They won that game. They beat the Minnesota Vikings, Big deal.
Yeah.
They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers when the Pittsburgh Steelers weren't going so well, and Bell was out, their running back, who changed the picture for the Steelers last week.
So big deal there too.
Big deal.
Yeah.
I say to that. They played the Detroit Lions. They lost that one. They played the New Orleans Saints. They lost that one, and they beat the New York Giants.
Big deal.
Everyone beats the New York Giants.
Yeah.
So the bookmakers in Las Vegas aren't very impressed. Now it's hard to explain, and I know it's hard for people to gather. Howard and I, we're right in sync with this game, I believe. But all I can tell you is the Washington Redskins embarrassed the Dallas Cowboys last week, in my opinion, on Sunday night. They won the yard battle by 250 yards. The Dallas Cowboys had 230 yards of offense, and they won the game by 17 points. That was like a complete anomaly. That will not happen. The Washington Redskins should have won that game last Sunday night, and I just think the Washington Redskins are going to win this game this Sunday. It's a complete and utter fish spread.
Wow.
I like the Washington Redskins. This is one of my top picks of the week. Take the Washington Redskins at home. They're going to beat the Chicago Bears this week.
You know what? I wouldn't bet on Washington Redskins anymore this year if somebody else gave me the money. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I just said to hell with the Washington Redskins. After my two favorite handicappers and the two most respected handicappers I know said take Washington last week against Dallas.
Yep.
I don't know. Ben's saying take Washington this week against the Chicago Bears and my friend Mark Trestman. Handsome Howard, give us your perspective.
I agree 100% with what Ben had to say. I mean, one thing that handicappers have to look at, and it's a very good point, is the quality of teams are beating. Because a team can be 5-1, and yet they've beaten Jacksonville, they've beaten the Giants, they've beaten all stiff teams, right? The Chicago Bears, they lost to Detroit on the road, and
New Orleans.
And New Orleans on the road.
True.
Okay?
No, at home.
At home. Okay, they lost to New Orleans at home. So what were the games that they won on the road? They beat...
You just said.
No, they beat Cincinnati at home, they beat Minnesota at home, and they beat the Giants at home, and they beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh.
Okay, so they've only had 2 road games. They beat Pittsburgh and lost to Detroit.
Right. That's correct, sir.
The Washington Redskins...
By the way, the Bears are 2 wins out of their last 10 trips into Washington.
Okay.
Wow, that's a very important nugget.
So these are things you can't just not take for granted.
Yeah.
I'm not impressed with Washington Redskins this year either. They to me, I disagree with you, Ben. I was very disappointed with the way they played Sunday night. I thought Griffin was hurrying throws. He was throwing the ball into places he shouldn't have been throwing it. He doesn't excel.
He's playing
Howard,
scared,
Howard.
He's playing scared. He's got that bad knee. He's throwing the ball as quickly as he can instead of running around looking for a ball.
He doesn't have that sort of look he had last year when he was playing. Like he had that confident look, that swagger.
I will never deny that.
Swagger.
But they did put up 460 yards against the Dallas Cowboys last week.
Okay, but maybe a lot of that was late in the game when Dallas was playing.
And I also think that
I
think the Cowboys were having a letdown game, which is one of the reasons I think you guys picked Washington, because they had just played a memorable game against Denver, a shootout.
Marty, I happen to disagree. I think that they that's how the Dallas Cowboys play last week, and they had an up game against Denver because the Dallas Cowboys aren't that good.
The bottom line is the Washington Redskins weren't as bad as they look. I thought they looked bad Sunday night, and I don't believe they'll be as bad this Sunday. I do believe they will come at home and beat the Chicago Bears at home. A lot has to do with home field advantage in that game.
All right.
That's strictly on home field advantage, and that's why I would take the Washington Redskins.
All right, so there you go. Take the Washington Redskins. And I happen to know that both of these gentlemen have made Washington one of their top picks for this week. So we'll get to their other top picks as well. Handsome Howard Kamen, Uncle Ben of UncleBen'sFootball.com, Marty York. We'll be right back with their top picks. Don't go away.